Today's video is how to become financially independent. We are going to talk about the steps to take in order to become financially independent, which means you don't have to work a 9-to-5 job anymore if you don't want to, or rely on someone else for money. I've been able to become financially independent myself, so I am sharing my best strategies with you. Let's dive right in. All right, if you've ever asked yourself, how do I become financially independent? I'm going to answer that question for you in today's video. Make sure and stick around until the very end because the last strategy is the most important. All right, step number 1 on how to become financially independent is to set a goal to become financially independent. If we don't have the goal of financial independence, then we're not going to get there. We won't be able to work toward that goal. And of course, we want to set smaller goals along the way so that we do not feel overwhelmed by the ultimate goal of financial independence. This is exactly what I did. I set small goals along the way and I was able to become financially independent. I set a goal to buy my first property and have roommates in there collecting cash flow from them. I then decided to purchase another property, which was strictly an investment property, and I started creating cash flow from that investment property. And then I purchased a third property, which I ended up moving into, leaving my roommates at my old place and getting new roommates at my new place and increased my cash flow that way. Once I had those 3 properties, I took a look at my numbers and I decided, all right, I need one more property in order to become financially free or become financially independent. And I set the goal to get that property and I ended up getting that property. And this was not just an easy process that I did very, very quickly. It took time, but I set the initial goals and I was very specific about what I wanted to achieve. I wanted to have a certain amount for my down payment. So I set that specific amount and had a deadline that I wanted to achieve that by. So when you are setting your financial goals, make sure you are very specific and you have a timeline associated with those goals. And an extra tip to kind of help with this, if you're thinking, well, I have my goals, but I'm not really sure what steps I want to take or need to take, you can look at someone else that has achieved what you want to achieve and just think, all right, what would they do if they were in my situation? I know I've asked myself this question multiple times. My friend that invests in real estate that I asked a lot of questions to, if I had something that came up, a problem that I wasn't really sure how to solve on my own, I would just think, all right, what would he do in this situation? And I would think, oh, he would do this, and then I would do that. It makes a difference if we can have someone that we can kind of emulate. And it can just be as generic as, all right, if I want to be a millionaire, then what would Tiffany do? She's already a millionaire. Would she be spending her money on buying this new car, or would she save up for a down payment on another property? She would probably save up for a down payment on another property. And then once she has that, she could pay for that car with the cash flow she is getting from her property. It just helps put things in perspective. And then step number 2 on how to become financially independent that really helped me do that was to have a budget or a spending plan. So I knew exactly how much money was coming in. I knew exactly how much money was going out and where it was going out to. And then I could make adjustments. If I didn't have my spending plan, I wouldn't know those details. I wouldn't be able to track it and make progress, make adjustments. The way that I like to set up my spending plan is by using a Google Sheet. And then I also use a free app. It's called Empower. You can hook all of your financial accounts to Empower, such as your checking, your savings, your credit cards, your 401k, everything you can think of that is financial. And that way you can see your full picture in one place. It makes it so much easier rather than writing down all of your expenses every single month and then taking a look at that and thinking, all right, where should I make adjustments? You can immediately pull up the app, see where you've spent money and think, all right, maybe I shouldn't be spending so much money on this thing or in this area, and you can make adjustments very quickly. Also, a little bonus tip to go along with this is to check your money every single day. I check Empower almost every day. That way I know exactly what is happening with my money and I can make adjustments immediately. It's just on the top of my mind. For example, if you get on the scale every single day, you are going to lose weight just by getting on the scale because it's at the top of your mind and you're thinking, oh, I really do want to reduce my weight. So you start making adjustments. You didn't necessarily map out a whole plan, but since you are aware of it, it just becomes part of what you are doing. The third item is to pay off any high interest debt that you have. We want to make sure that we are investing our money when it's appropriate. But if we have high interest debt right now, for example, if it's 18% or 24%, whatever it is, if it's above about 8%, we want to make sure and pay that debt off before we invest, because we are not going to make more money investing. We'd actually make more money by paying down our high interest debt. Because when we pay that debt off, we are not paying that high interest rate, that 18% or whatever it is. So make sure you know what your debts are and the interest rates associated with each debt, and start paying those down if they are above about 8%. And if you want more details on how to pay off this debt, I have another video for you. I will leave a link above. You can check that out later on. I have a client that came to me. She had a lot of high interest debt. She had some unfortunate circumstances in her life, and she had this debt and she really wanted to pay it off. So she made that list with all of her debts and the balances, the minimum payment, the interest rates, and she started paying those debts off one by one. And once she did that and then had a savings, she came to me and we were able to get her money invested and set up a retirement plan for her. So it's really critical that we are paying off those high interest debts so that we can move forward and become financially independent. And then item number 4 is to set up an emergency fund. And we actually want to set up an emergency fund before we pay off all of our high interest debt. That way, in case there is an emergency that comes up, we aren't going into even more debt. So make sure you have a set number for your emergency fund and get that emergency fund funded. That way, when there are unexpected expenses, we have money to pay for that without going into debt. And if you want to know how I figure out how much to keep in your emergency fund, I break this down in another video. I will leave a link above. And make sure that you are keeping your emergency fund in a high interest savings account. This is what I've done. And I've been able to make extra money every single month just from that interest rate. I like using Ally, ALLY. There are a lot of options out there. So pick one with a higher interest rate, and depending on how much money you have in your emergency fund, you can make maybe $50 to $100 every single month. Once we have that emergency fund, then we are protected when we have an emergency come up, and that way we can get closer to financial independence. And then item number 5 is to invest our money. If we want to become financially independent, that means that we are able to live our desired lifestyle without having to work for money or rely on someone else for money. So we need our money working for us so that we don't have to work for the money. The way we do that is by investing our money. I've been able to do that through real estate and the stock market. The stock market is the easiest way to make your money work for you. It's very passive. Real estate does take some work. It is more semi-passive, but those two together is what helped me become financially independent. Of course, you can do the way that works best for you. But if you are interested in investing in the stock market, I have a free masterclass on how to do that. I will leave a link below in the description. You can check out that free masterclass. It is really important that we are investing our money as soon as possible. We want to take care of those other things. One way to make sure that we invest our money is to automate it. We can automate our investing, that way we don't have to think about it. And going back to creating that emergency fund, we can also automate our savings. We can set an auto transfer from our checking to our savings, and that way we don't have to think about saving our money either. But if we can automate our investing, that is going to make it so much easier for us to become financially independent. We aren't going to have to remember to log into our investment accounts and transfer money over and select our investments. I also talk about this in the masterclass, so make sure and click that link below and check it out. And if you are thinking, well, how much money do I need to invest in order to become financially independent? Great question. The way I like to look at this is to take your annual expenses in retirement and multiply that number by 25. For example, if you know you're going to be spending $40,000 every single year, then you'll multiply 40,000 by the number 25. That is going to give you $1 million. So you would need $1 million invested, not sitting in your savings account, because that's not going to give us enough interest to live off of, but invested. And then we will be able to become financially independent. Take a moment and figure out what your annual expenses are going to be in retirement. And this doesn't have to be permanent. You can definitely adjust along the way. So you can even use what your expenses are now, or some of the financial gurus say it'll be about 70 to 80% of your current expenses, depending on how old you are, how far away retirement is for you. But that's a good place to start, either current expenses or 70 to 80% of those expenses, unless you're very young and you don't have really any expenses. So take your best guess and calculate the number and work toward that number and then adjust along the way. And another thing to point out, if you already have passive income or semi-passive income, you can deduct that from your annual expenses. For example, if my expenses were $50,000 every single year, but I have $10,000 in rental income every single year, then I would subtract the $10,000 from the $50,000, my original annual expenses, and that would give me $40,000, and I would multiply that by the number 25, which is $1 million. So if you do have rental income, or if you are getting Social Security, or if you have a pension, you can definitely subtract out that passive income that you know you will continue to receive. And this way, when we have our $1 million or whatever amount you came up with invested, we can start withdrawing 4% of that money every single year, that $40,000. And it will continue to grow enough that we are not going to run out of money. That's why we need it invested and not just sitting in a savings account. And then step number 6, and this one is pretty obvious, but we want to live below our means, right? If we are spending more or everything that we are making, we are never going to be able to invest money to become financially independent, to start making our money work for us. So make sure that you have your spending plan set up, that you know exactly what you are spending and how much money you have coming in. And then step number 7 is to continue to educate yourself about finances. The more that we can learn about saving money or investing money or setting up our spending plan, things like that, the better we are going to be with our money, as long as we are applying those principles that we are learning. Of course, you can check out videos like this on YouTube. There are podcasts that you can follow. There are also books you can buy. Speaking of books, I do have my book, You Will Be Financially Free. So I will leave a link to this below in the description. And this is really going to help you get your money set up and learn to save and invest your money. I talk specifically about how I was able to invest in real estate and the stock market, the steps that I took so that you can apply these principles to your own life. Comment below and tell me one way you are going to continue to educate yourself about finances. And then step number 8 to help us become financially independent is to reduce our taxes. We want to think of different ways that we can minimize the taxes that we are paying. And one way that I've been able to do this is by starting my own business. I get a lot of deductions by having my own business. So this is one thing that you can do as well. It can be a very simple business. You don't have to spend 40 hours a week on your business. It can be very minimal, but you can have a lot of deductions and pay less in taxes. For example, I get to deduct off the space I am using for my YouTube studio here. And I can deduct off some of my travel expenses and my phone bill expenses and taking clients out to dinner, things like that. There are just a number of different deductions you can get by starting your own business. And then step number 9, and this is so important, and it is to be patient. Be patient with yourself. I know that you want to achieve financial independence. I really wanted that too. But it is going to take time. This is not something that happens overnight. So be patient with yourself and be patient with your investments. If you are following these principles, you can become financially independent. I know that it is possible. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button and share it with someone else who would like to hear this information. And hit the subscribe button to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the little bell to get notified on when I post new videos. And if you want to see even more great content from me, make sure and check out the videos on the side of the screen. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.